Started here. So welcome everyone. This is a new set of fireside chats with Columbia Global Dialogue and World Salon. Today we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence, applications, some of the developments, the productivity boost that may come, the collaboration opportunities with academic institutions. Joined by a really exciting set of people here. We have Sadid Hassan from Microsoft, Jungkoo Kang from IBM Research, Jeff Easley from the Responsible AI Institute, myself, Robson Beaudry from Mila. So just to start off, I think we'll give each panelist a chance to introduce themselves. So I'll start with Jeff.
Hi, very nice to meet everyone and very excited to be here. I'm Jeff Easley. I have spent about 30 years in the financial services industry, mostly. This last year, very excited year for me to be the GM of the Responsible AI Institute, which is based in Texas and been around since 2016. But as far as my background, I started out as a consultant, slaving away and doing huge technology implementations. And then for the next 20 years, I spent at USAA, which is a fantastic financial services firm for the US military and their families. And inside of that, which we'll talk about, I got a chance to do some amazing innovations. And then the past couple of years, I spent some time with Goldman Sachs in their Marcus Consumer Bank. And then, the last year has been an incredible year with a passionate team to really push out on responsible AI. So very thrilled to be here and nice to meet everyone.
Wonderful. We'll pass it over to Sadid.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sadid Hassan. I'm AI lead in Microsoft AI Development and Acceleration Program. So currently leading the generative AI capabilities for Office M365 Copilots and Azure Copilots as part of the Microsoft AI Development Program. So I'm based in Cambridge in US. And before Microsoft, as an executive director of AI for CVS Health. And before that, I spent some time in Philips Research as a senior scientist and technical lead. So my background is in AI machine learning. So I've been in this field for a while now. So yeah, very excited to participate in this chat today. Thank you.
Wonderful. And over to you, Jungkoo.
Hello, my name is Jungkoo Kang. I'm from IBM Research. Yeah, I'm currently located at the just like Sadid, the Cambridge, and the place that I'm working at is MIT IBM Watson AI Lab. And since I've been at IBM, my work has been related to improving the reasoning capacity of artificial intelligence with various approach. And before I come to IBM, I work for the Ford Motor Company to figure out how to use the real-time streaming data from the individual cars. Yeah.
Wonderful. And myself, I'm Robson Beaudry. I work as a senior strategy advisor at Mila, an artificial intelligence institute based in Montreal, founded by Yoshua Bengio. Like Jeff, I worked as a consultant for a few years. I've also worked in technology startups. I worked in Shanghai for 2 years for a technology company. So we might touch on DeepSeek during this conversation. And so within my role, I'm really focused on how we can use the power and the research that's coming out of Mila, to have impact in the real world, whether that's economic impact through AI adoption, or whether that's social impact through applied projects or policy recommendations. So very excited about today's conversation. We're going to start with a few guided questions. So I'll start with Sadid. How is your experience transitioning from healthcare-focused AI roles to cutting-edge AI initiatives at Microsoft shaped your perspective on the versatility of AI across industries?
Yeah, thanks, Robson. Yeah, so obviously, I think the answer lies in your question. So, so the reason I transitioned from healthcare to Microsoft is obviously the dimensions and the diversity of portfolios and the domains that we work with. You know, Starting from including healthcare, like Nuance. Then we have LinkedIn, GitHub. In addition to the work that we are currently leading in terms of the Office M365 or legacy products, and Azure is basically the backbone of you know all the infrastructure that we are building for AI. So definitely the transition helped me a lot in terms of seeing the connections, because obviously the reason I spend a long time in healthcare is because it's one of the most challenging domain for application of AI, and of course the most impact, I would say. So I'm biased in healthcare domain, of course, because you can directly impact the users, the patients, and all of us would be impacted if we can apply AI properly. So my experience in healthcare helped me a lot through this transition, because healthcare obviously has higher standards. Thinking about responsible AI best practices. Because if you make a mistake in healthcare for any tasks, so that has a huge cost, right? So that helped me to build products within Microsoft in similar bar and scale, because obviously that's the knowledge that I could bring in from healthcare. And on top of that, the scalability is another factor, because we have like millions and billions of customers in Microsoft. So and healthcare is kind of also the same solutions, similar models can be used. So that transition in terms of scalability, knowledge, and best practices, that also helped in building solutions in Microsoft that touches millions and billions of customers. And the other part is the collaboration, right? So healthcare, one key aspect of successful AI application in healthcare is basically collaborating with the clinicians. So there has to be deep collaboration between clinicians, applied scientists, engineers, so that the end-to-end application is meaningful for the users, and including the patients as well, so that we are trying to solve their problems. So that experience also is very useful in other domains, because customer should be the first. We need to solve a customer problem. It's not about what big technology that we're inventing if it is not useful for the customers and users. So that's one huge learnings that I brought in from healthcare. And last but not the least is continuous learning and adaptation of the solutions, because obviously you mentioned DeepSeek. So if you blink your eyes, you'll see new models coming every day. So the technology is moving very fast. We are also inventing many of the solutions at scale. So but you have to connect the dots, because model is not equal to product. So for product building, you really need to be responsible. You have to solve lots of engineering challenges to make it scalable. So for that, you also need to have a continuous learning loop from the users, because they are actually giving also continuous feedback in terms of what's working, what's not working, so that the models can actually improve in the back end. So those are some of the learnings I see that really helps across all the domains.
Interesting. Moving on to Junko. So your work at IBM research encompasses neurosymbolic reasoning, advanced AI planning. So how are you seeing these methods evolving, and what future applications or industries are going to benefit the most from this? Is it going to be more along the lines of some of these productivity enhancing worker tools? Is it going to be more in fields like healthcare? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, so I'll first address about some characteristic of generative AI in general, whether it is a large language model or the vision models. So generative AI technologies themselves do not guarantee what comes out. So by design, they are approximate retrievers. So when you provide input, it gives you most approximate result that come out of it. And also probable is by nature is probabilistic. So for example, there's no guarantee that there's output is valid, sound, or optimal. So there's no mathematical guarantee of things come out can do the job in the reality. Yeah. So the using generative AI themselves also as a validator to check other generative AI technologies, just like a large language model as a judge, itself had a problem because there's no grounding, factual grounding. So the way that they make a judgment is simply because of the semantic result, the semantics, the result from the training, not because of the logical reasoning. So neurosymbolic approaches can take advantage of generator or translator aspect of generative AI and the mathematical soundness and optimality from the symbolic AI approach. So meanwhile, combining those two things are terribly hard. It's from the conceptual perspective, from the architect to even come up with the way to combine it itself is hard. But actually the code this thing, bundling this thing up and putting into the production is extremely hard. Even though after you putting that thing up, the running cost is really, really, really small compared to the generative AI itself approaches. So because of that, it's a great challenge. Yeah, and also the other greatest challenge is when you create the neurosymbolic approaches, the domain that you cover become very, very small. So even though it solved the problem in the specific domain, it never guaranteed that it will solve the problem in the other domain. So this is the characteristics of current the neurosymbolic approaches, that when it solves the problem, it comes with the mathematical guarantees and accuracies. But it is very hard to expand the domain, very hard to even come up with a solution. So there are many the room for the improvement. Yeah.
And interestingly, I mean, for those in the audience who don't know, this symbolic AI approach and the more neural inspired approach, it seems that one has kind of been more popular than the other over the decades. Currently, we're seeing this neural approach being very popular with LLMs. What's been behind kind of bringing back that symbolic approach? And going forward, do you see this synthesis being the future, or are these, do you think, by and large, going to remain separate or perhaps used for different use cases?
Let me give you a low-hanging fruit answer. So
Sure.
Let's look at the way the DeepSeek is working. So in the DeepSeek, there's the reinforcement learning-like algorithm, not the total reinforcement learning in the classical sense, to actually train the large language model. And if you look at the reward function over there, reward function is not the fuzzy reward function. Reward function was a rule-based. So what is the rule? In the end, it is a symbolic structure, right? To give them a valid result. So even though they don't advertise the thing as whether it's symbolic or something, when there is a mathematical guarantee and certain rule type per characteristic comes in, symbolic AI is automatically involved in. So I would like to say that it already happened, and it is just a matter of the naming convention. Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. Turning now to Jeff. So you were instrumental in pioneering some of the financial industry's first digital check deposit service, co-founding USA Labs. How did these experiences inform your current approach to fostering responsible AI innovations within organizations?
Yeah, it's first of all, to be with amazing research folks. I think this can be a great conversation. Just to characterize my perspectives, I'm coming from how do you get these in market and not harm people, not get sued, not enrage your shareholders, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's a real interesting look back in time. This is maybe 20 years ago now. So I'll be the first to acknowledge that talking about check imaging is nowhere close to large language models, AI agents, and everything else that I know colleagues here look and work with every day. So, but it's still the same in terms of what to think of and think through as you actually put these things into market, into people's hands. And so back then, everyone was still having to write a lot of checks. This is the US, so I don't know why we still want to write checks, but we do. And someday, the tech's been here for decades. We don't really need to, but we can have a whole other panel on that. But the fact remains that back then it was a massive change. And in the financial industry, especially super highly regulated, you're coming from a very low risk tolerance environment. And I know that's similar in many other industries. It's not just this, but just painting the picture for you that as I had conversations with the bank president, the chief counsel, the chief risk officer, I was met with fierce resistance. I won't even go into what the words were actually said to me. A bit shocking in my younger years, but still, absolutely not. We're not doing this. And so, coming in as a product person, young, bright-eyed, let's usher in the future. I think it's very relevant to what we're all talking about today. It's the same thing in terms of whether you want to think about them, call them out, identify them, or manage them. The risks are the other side of the same coin, and you can never. I'll just tell you, as a person who's been through all of this, with that innovation and a few others, as we amplify the power of what this technology can do, the same amplification is happening to the risks. And it just means you have to be really good at both if you really want to get this out there in people's hands. So, we can go all the way through the different use cases, whether it's health or banking or manufacturing, logistics, those kinds of things, but it's all the same. So I'd say that has very much sealed within me an appreciation for solving both at the same time. Obviously, Responsible Institute that I lead now is all about how do we help the community, the member community, wrap their arms around what this is, how to deploy it, and how to safely implement safeguards and other things to do no harm to people or the planet. And so back then, no one had ever in the history of banking since the Machiavellis in Italy had ever given a check to a bank, in this case, and then kept the check. So there's a massive risk in terms of representment. You're sending the bank an image. And now every bank in the US has this, it's table stakes, but just bring yourself back to the time where that had never happened, and it was inconceivable. And quote, the bank president will go to jail, et cetera, et cetera. This is a really bad idea. We should not do this. And so the real lesson here, and I'm happy to provide as much color or context as anyone wants, is you have to get yourself out of the bright and shiny innovator framework and into the what can really go wrong. No kidding, spend a lot of time on it, think through it. How could this harm someone, harm the organization, et cetera? What are the real risks? And then do not proceed until you have a very good handle on them. Now, 20 years ago, there was the break things and go fast sort of mantra, right? The Silicon Valley, just go, just break things and learn and keep going. I think that's officially over. I think you cannot do that this time around because people will get hurt. I mean, physically as well, not only just their mental states and all the other risks that are involved, but I am a massive innovation fan. It's been a hallmark of my career. So just don't misunderstand. You've got to do both. You've got to invent the future and manage the risks at the same time. And I think that we spend a lot of time to wrap up the story on what happens when, someone represents a check. They send us the same image again. Like, how do we prevent that from happening? It's harder than you think, but there are a lot of incredible innovations in just making sure that did not happen, and making sure that we were, as our duty as a financial services company, do not introduce risk into the U.S. financial system. Like, can you imagine if everyone just decided to send in images to their banks, with checks that weren't real? So good news is that future did not, that risk did not get realized, but only after a lot of work on managing the risks and making sure they were properly mitigated and within thresholds, and then all the proper governance and risk management framework around it, which is what the Responsible Institute really helps members do. It's the same thing. It's weird because I actually went from USA Labs, which I was blessed to co-found, to the chief risk office itself, which is absolutely not what you dream about when you want to be some big innovator. You don't want to be a leader in the risk office, but it really made it much more powerful for me to understand both sides and operate clearly, in a way that the goal is the same. Let's get this innovation into the hands of others. Let's unlock the power of AI. Now, I know I'm outclassed here, but now we're moving into agents, someday into physical AI, right? So I'm going to continue to sound the bell of, you have to solve for the risks at the same time, otherwise it will not be successful, and worse, bad things can happen. So ever since then, I've had that healthy appreciation for finding people on the team that we would call naysayers, right? Oh, you don't get it. You don't buy into the vision. No, don't dismiss them. They're the most important product manager you can find, because they're the ones telling you this is what you have to solve. And then I would implore, go solve it. Don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it. Think about it, define it, understand the likelihood and impact, just like any risk, and then put your plans together for how you are going to address that, how that's going to be solved in your solution or capability that you're rolling out. So anyway, that was my first big aha moment. It led to a wildly successful launch. USAA, this military focused bank, or insurance company in San Antonio, Texas, launched the greatest financial services innovation since ATMs in the late 60s, right? So it was fantastic, and all made possible by making sure we solved the risk equation. So yeah, now more than ever, that's important as we really move this technology forward.
Struck by especially that story about the executives being so averse to this, to integrating the solution. I think there is a ton of enthusiasm about AI, but I think there is also a lot of distrust around. And in fact, really interestingly, yesterday I saw there was a Google Ipsos poll that came out showing kind of enthusiasm and optimism around AI actually being higher in the developing world than in the US, Canada, Europe. And particularly in Canada, it's a challenge we're facing as we're hoping for more AI adoption in the economy, is that trust levels are quite low around AI, around integrating it, around the risks. So I'd be interested in getting people's takes around, how do you start to build that trust? Obviously we can do it with, the direct people we're working with, but more broadly within society, how do we get to the point where people feel comfortable integrating, not just Microsoft and IBM, but even down to small, medium enterprises?
Yeah, I have a very interesting question, Robson. I'll chime in with my thoughts. Back years ago, as part of large organizations, there were well-intended initiatives to, quote, build trust, right? To establish that, get everyone in the room, hey, let's trust each other. I'm being a little bit flippant about it, but it always rubbed me the wrong way, and I believe in it. But what I realized was trust is built through actions. It's not built through words. And I think my answer to your question, or my contribution to your question is, you already have trust in your own personal brand and the brand of the people you work with. It's already built in, and it's what you've been building brick after brick for some period of time. That's how hard it is to establish and keep trust. But in this case, the moment a risk is realized, the moment something goes wrong, that brick house can fall down very quickly, and sometimes to the ground. So I think that's my answer to that, is, since I'm very much on the risk side of things right now, is channel your passion, just as much as your passion in doing something amazing, into making sure that your trust that you've worked so hard to establish is not at risk itself by something going wrong with what you're doing. And so from my experience, it's better to preserve and continue to build by launching something or providing something that's amazing, that actually does not realize the inherent risks involved. So your chatbot, your, I don't know, virtual agent, virtual employee, coming soon, is fantastic, and trust increases, I think, as you please your intended audience more and more. But it can be immediately destroyed if something goes wrong. So that just means I recommend your energy go into making sure your risks are minimized as possible. Because no matter what you do, you can't say, hey, trust us. I know that's not your question, Robson, but I think it's inherent in anything you introduce and put in people's hands or allow them to use, is the implied trust. It's going to work as you think. It's going to be fine. Harm will not come, et cetera, et cetera. But if anything like that does happen, of course, it's all over. So, well, not over, but you've lost a lot of trust, and very hard to rebuild that.
Yeah. And Sadid, what about you? You're building actual products that people are going to be using. How does that enter into your thinking?
Yeah, totally. So I think, yeah, as Jeff mentioned, right? So trust is something that, you can just speak about it, and it has to be based on actions. So we obviously we follow, all the guidelines, responsible AI best practices. So the transparency, I think, is the key here, right? In terms of like what problem we are trying to solve, how much of it is it actually, solving, what benchmarks these models have been tested on, lots of iterations. So for example, if we launch some product, we actually do lots of testing internally. We call it rings. So inside rings, we do lots of testing before it goes to outside ring, and finally it lands into production, into the final, user system where, everyone externally can use it. So that transition actually ensures that, we are taking into account users' feedback continuously to improve the systems. So short answer to your question is obviously the information, more knowledge and transparency about what we are building. So that's why, for example, we're calling some of this, most of these solutions that we're building right now, we're calling it co-pilots, because we believe that this is gonna provide an extra opinion, additional eye, and some sort of assistance to the problem that the users are trying to solve. So the humans would be always in the loop. They would know that, okay, this is, draft answer to some questions, or maybe if they're trying to create a summary for a Word document, they know that, okay, this is an AI generated summary, and they can evaluate and kind of collaborate with AI. So that's kind of the collaboration model we are thinking. So the user experience is the key, and the information has to be provided, the transparency, knowledge. So it's kind of the uncertainty and information is the two sides of the same coin. So definitely AI literacy is something that's why actually I'm also here today. So I try to evangelize and make sure that AI is already embedded within our day-to-day life, right? So even as you started talking about symbolic AI versus neural AI, so many rule-based systems we're already using. Recommendation systems are embedded in all search systems, Netflix, product, Amazon. So people are already using AI extensively, right? So we just need to make it clear that what are the risks, as Jeff mentioned, right? So what are the risks, how it is actually solving, and these are all the options. Still, humans should be in the loop to make the final decision, and who would be accountable for some decisions. So those are some of the responsible AI best practices we try to follow.
And I'll just quickly add, Robson, if I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great point, Sadid. If you think of risks, I'm sorry I'm being such a risk nerd, but if you think of it in terms of, okay, controls are a mechanism to address risk in terms of a structured approach. Well, to your point, the greatest control of them all is people. And if people are not, do not have, good AI literacy, to your point, you're really not starting from a good place. So I absolutely applaud that, and that's our number one thing as we help our members with, first of all, get everyone trained up, get everyone educated on it, and really understanding, how it works, exciting parts as well as the risky parts. So I absolutely agree with that point.
And so we're talking a bit about kind of integrating AI into products. I'm interested at Mila. I've heard from some researchers that they're perceiving more of a shift in how companies spend R&D from more fundamental research in AI to more product-driven research. Junko, I'd be interested to hear if that's something you've noticed, and if so, what do you think are some of the drivers or consequences?
There's a famous story told by actually Henry Ford. So Henry Ford said that when he asked people what they want, they ask for the better horses.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that kind of anecdote really symbolized the people's desire to create something not other consumers never even ask for. But we want to do it because we know that this one brings the new dimension of the values. So that's the one way to approach the problem. For example, Copilot, no one asked for it. Yeah, but when technology emerged, we were able to create it. But the problem is the monetization. Once we create that type of feature, will people pay for the thing that they never asked for? So that's the one set of approach. And right before the emergence of the AI technologies, the industry were largely driven by the agile movement. And the one core of the agile movement is actually constant checking of the product market fit of the certain feature they develop. For example, when they bring something up, they try to figure out whether the feature you're developing or someone else is developing is looking at the right target, and constantly track that down. In that way, by the time that the technology or product is ready to launch, you already have an audience to pay for it. So striking a balance between the tools are not easy, because if you go to the latter option, the stockholders will say that, oh, like you don't take any risk. How can you make an innovation? But if you take a first approach, you may have a hard time to find any consumer after putting billions of dollars into technologies. So there can be some balance between the two. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm interested as well. I mean, on this topic of building products and adopting, It's something that we think a lot about at Mila. We're a research institute, but we're also, one of our missions is to try to get, companies and organizations within Canada to adopt and start to spread out some of the benefits of this. So I'd be interested just how you think about, there often seems to be this gap in between, fundamental research, which, comes out in a paper and it's great. And then like something like Copilot, which is actually used on the ground by millions of people. So I'd be interested for the panelists, just how you think about bridging that gap. How do you kind of get that from point A to point B?
Yeah,
Because it's because it's Copilot. I think that Sadie should answer.
I was thinking the same thing.
Sure. Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, so that's why actually I'm proud to be part of a team that's actually a groundbreaking team that we established back in 2018. So this is Microsoft AI Development and Acceleration Program. So my team is part of Office of the CTO. So we are cross-functional team. So our role is basically have to create the bridge between research and production. So we are the acceleration team. So we work closely with Microsoft Research. We do our own research to see like what problem we want to solve. Is it solvable within the latest technologies that are available? If not, we build new technologies, improve models, customize, fine-tune models. So for example, some of the systems that we built recently that are also published in we also publish quite a lot in various conferences. So that's kind of how we are transitioning Microsoft into AI first mindset, where the collaboration between researchers, we also collaborate with academia, to bring in the fresh talent. So our team brings in fresh talent from academia, and then it's kind of a rotational program that we built, that where each 6 months we rotate with one product team to solve one ambitious problem, or it could be something that we need to push to product very soon. So it's kind of various horizon type of problem, like very ambitious or researchy or product oriented. And through this rotational program, so each 6 months, at least 4 rotations each of my teammates they go through, and after 2 years they join one of the product teams. So this is how we are kind of making sure that the fresh talent who are coming from research background and academia background, they know how to build products, how to bring in their talent and solve some problem. And we work with customers and the users to get feedback as well continuously. So that's how we are kind of transitioning and making sure that both worlds are connected, because that's really important, as you mentioned, right? So nothing can live without the other. So you need to continue pushing state of the art in AI. At the same time, you need to make sure that they're scalable, because otherwise, what's the point? Because you have millions of users. So
Yeah.
It's a really interesting time, because I know I sound like a risk guy, but I promise you I'm a product guy. And not 2 years ago, it would take a team of, a small team, a handful of folks, months and months to sort of concept test, to validate, to do the product research and marketing research, and sort of gather all the intel to see if this is something worth pursuing, which is a very common model in large organizations. That was 2 years ago. Now, you literally, and I'm sure these are employed by my colleagues here, you can develop AI-enabled agents and other tools to do that in hours, if not days, right? And collect all that information, even market test it. Not exactly the same as before, but pretty good, I'll say, and probably getting better and better by the day. As well as get it out. It all depends on use case and many other factors, but conceivably, and I think it'll happen, if it's not happening already, it's happening soon, you can begin launching these very quickly and learning from them live. Again, risks managed, smaller implementations, whatever, but you're not talking 3 months of research and concept validation, and then a big effort to actually launch it across many teams in a big company. So it's just absolutely democratized. Bit of a tired word, but still, putting it in the hands of many, many more people who were able to do that very quickly and almost, as effectively, but probably more effectively, not very far from now, to get to the right answer that takes that 2 years ago takes a whole product management discipline, research discipline, et cetera, with a large number of players to make happen. So in terms of what I call product development, it's just amazing how that will transform, just similar to Copilot and development itself. So anyway, fascinated by that, but I think we're here.
And it's interesting with that democratization, right? Because we're seeing, I mean, with DeepSeek, but even before that, I mean, just these models kind of leapfrogging one after the other, Google, Anthropic, OpenAI, especially with the open sourcing that Meta is doing. I mean, it seems like it's very hard to keep a competitive advantage on like a model alone. And so especially we saw with the early LLMs kind of trained on the internet, it seems like data is starting to emerge as a bit of a competitive advantage.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to get your takes as well on like what do we see the future of that looking? Have we kind of run out of the easy data? Is synthetic data going to play more of a role? And who's kind of well positioned to start to provide new or more meaningful sources of data to these models?
I'll let one of our more technology proficient panelists take that one.
Yeah, Janko, do you want
Why? So,
It's an easy question.
this is a very people are actively debating about how the neural network is actually. So when we say that we use synthetic data, usually those indicate that those synthetic data are for the reasoning problem in many cases, majority of the cases. And those synthetic data are generated by the rule-based models, of course. The thing is, there's a debate that some people argue that those things, outcome of those training used by those synthetic data is simply just the retrieval. There's no such thing as the logical reasoning process going on when the retrieval happened. And so far, the data, the support, evidence support exactly that. But there's the sort of the camp say that when model is trained upon many, many, many different tokens, the structure combinations of the token, the reasoning structure should emerge at some point, just by the showing people how drastically the performance of the language model improved at the certain time of the epoch training epoch. So those are highly debatable issue. Even there's the group of person, actually even one person, the Ilya the Suskeva, actually say that the synthetic data doesn't do too much. So I should say that the view, looking at the value of synthetic data is still pretty diverse. Yeah.
And what's the consequence of that if we're still just creating better and better stochastic parrots that are just kind of retrieving what they've seen? I mean, are we going to hit a wall then at some point as we start to run out of easy data to train them on?
No, I think that the problem is when you even from now, there's no way to make a clear distinction between which data are generated, which data are not generated. So because of that, the sync data that we retrieve from the internet are likely to contain the synthetic, the data generated from certain model, and that makes the, how can I say that, the mode collapse problem in the model also. So that's one part. But the other part, but the other. So can you reiterate the question again? I kind of like spaced out a little bit.
Sure, no problem. I
Yeah.
mean, essentially, it is if we do believe the one camp that's saying that it really is just retrieving data. It's not. There's not actually any reasoning capabilities going on under the hood.
Yeah, also approximate reasoning. Okay, so that part. So now currently the interesting thing about AI field is many things are driven by the benchmarking.
Right.
And because of the nature of the large language model, which have an inner dimension, the more number than the number of the atoms in the space, whole universe. The whatever you throw out, it memorizes. And then the benchmark saturate. And then all the model claim the victory pretty quickly, within a month, if not weeks or days. So keep repeating the saturation and memorization. Will it actually help us to reach to creating machine actually can reason? Is one person's opinion. The one person might say that let's increase the size of the model infinitely so we can put all the reasoning problem over there so it can solve all different types of a problem. So that means that you should have an infinite storage, infinite cache. But the other side of the thing is, let's create an elegant algorithm that compact enough to put many places and then solve it fast with some guarantees, not just the behavior of memorizing and putting up. So yeah, but the creating that kind of technology is extremely hard. Yeah, and even people blame those kind of like large language model behavior actually don't have any solution to how to make it better. So yeah, so current situation is pretty interesting, yeah, from the perspective.
And Sadid, I mean, the large tech companies probably have more proprietary data than almost anyone. Do you see that as like going to be a really big advantage going forward versus some of these upstarts or startups which might not have that inbuilt access?
Yeah, definitely, because obviously, as I mentioned before, some of these models that are benchmark based, as Shangshu mentioned, right? So we need continuous feedback loop with our users to see like where they're failing and how to improve them. So could be prompt engineering, could be customizing the rack pipeline, or building an agentic framework on top of it. So finding the optimal solution that has to involve that continuous user data, user feedbacks to improve. So definitely that would be a plus point for kind of solving those corner cases, because benchmark data doesn't have all the corner cases, right? So we get to learn every day like what the users are thinking when they share their feedback with us, right? So that's really important. So, and just to add to the previous question that you had, so we also have seen like obviously synthetic data, generated by models and the large models, or if you use model destination techniques. So then there is a difference and diversity even within the synthetic data based on what kind of task you are trying to solve. So I feel like, and we have seen also signs that helps. So and even all the models that are coming up every day, right? So we actually love the diversity of the models, even though majority of the models right now are based on large language models, and then reinforcement learning, supervised fine tuning, to ensure they're grounded and aligned. But obviously, more needs to be done in terms of fundamental algorithm improvement. So with the new models that we are seeing, they're heading into that direction. So it shouldn't be always the bigger model that is the best model, or more data would be needed for a bigger or better performance. So we need to basically optimize between data needs, algorithms, what is needed for solving which problem. So my take on this is, it could be, may not be possible to build a large infinite model that can solve all the problems in the world. Ideally, you have to focus on the other side, which is like domain specific models and problem specific models, like reasoning models or mathematical specific models. So in that sense, the more models that are built, those are good. So we love them, and depending on the user needs, so then we can select like which model is actually appropriate for solving this, rather than so we can have some sort of routing going on to select like how to solve this problem. So you may not need your best model to solve the simplest of the problems.
Interesting. Great. So any aspiring entrepreneurs on the call, focus on the problem, the domain, and that can be a really powerful place to start. I'm going to do one more question maybe before we move on to the audience Q&A. This one's for Jeff. So with the new administration in the United States, it seems like the kind of accelerationist sect of AI has more of a presence. Obviously, Responsible AI Institute has been around for a while. So I'm interested in are you seeing that conversation shift? Obviously, and now an added wrinkle, there's this anxiety around China moving forward in the AI race. So how are you seeing that change the conversation around responsible AI and safe AI?
Yeah, great question. So, Trump's first action, one of his first actions, is to eliminate Biden's basically responsible AI executive orders. And so I think that is a clear signal, a very, very strong signal that underneath it, there's a real push for moving to the side of it's unfair, but the binary argument of innovation versus regulation. It's, real life is nothing close to that. But I think the winds definitely shifted to push hard in the direction of, I would say, in my view, taking more risks versus, really focus on policy standards and regulation. And so that we can blame an administration, but it's just a reflection of, I believe, what the community and what folks are feeling out there. As far as our members, which we have a lot of individual members, we also work with a number of large corporations, not only in the U.S. What I'm gathering from them is there's still a very strong desire to make sure this is unlocked in a responsible way, the power of all these capabilities. So I'm not seeing that diminish. At first, I was worried because of the big splashy actions that are happening, but I do believe in here, even from folks we work in policy with, that it's still a very strong push to get safeguards in place from policy and standard perspective. But when I think about or talk to actual organizations, businesses, they're at another dimension of this is we're moving past the, everybody freak out, assign someone as the chief responsibility AI officer, right? And get our framework set and make sure, our governance and risk functions are there, right? And I think everyone has, well, not everyone, but most have sort of gotten their houses in order in that regards. But now it's moved downstream to, okay, I need to build this stuff. Not only the capabilities, but the safeguards or the controls that wrap around them to ensure that the risks aren't realized. So I feel like not only is there a signal to be more aggressive in terms of innovation versus regulation, I don't think it's actually affecting regulation necessarily, but I do see that in the other dimension, people, a lot of members in the community are now in need of really how to do this, how to build this. How can you make sure you're aligned, in our case, with NIST RMF standards or ISO 42001 or OECD principles? And so it's getting serious because I think everyone realized, yes, you can pilot a capability and make a big splash, let your shareholders and your board know that you're serious about it, but now it has to work, right? And so I think that's the real seminal moment in the community, at least in our observation and conversations, that they are ready, they're active, they're implementing, and they need to make sure they have effective controls in place, which are those safeguards and guardrails. And so that, above that is the let's move towards innovation. Let's continue to be the leader in the world. And obviously, DeepSeek was a bit of a wake up call that we may not have been as far ahead as we thought, at least in the U.S. So while all that's going on, what I see on the ground is budgets have already been allocated, they're being spent, and many are moving out with some amazing AI-enabled capabilities. It's a little bit past the policy conversation. It's more now in the actually building these safeguards. So that's what I'm seeing from my vantage point.
Interesting. So, I mean, I guess protecting your users, protecting your stakeholders, that's going to be important no matter what the overarching kind of government environment.
Yes, especially if you're signaling or receiving the signal that it's go with these innovations. Now you have to race at the same time to shore that up on the risk side as well.
Excellent. Well, maybe we'll shift now over to the audience Q&A. We have a question from Stephen Yu. How do you envision AI transforming everyday life in the next 5 years, and what steps should individuals and businesses take to adapt to these changes? Maybe I'll start this one off. I mean, I think generally what you see and what I see to be true is that we overestimate in the short term and underestimate in the long term. So I think things are going to happen very gradually. We're going to start to see AI creeping in on the edges, and we may not even be calling it AI in a lot of cases. So I think we're going to see individually just AI start to replace some of our tasks in the way that we use email to no longer write letters, or small shifts in our day-to-day work. Obviously, in the background, I think there's going to be really heavy innovations in certain areas. We talked about healthcare. We talked about a few other industries, the financial industry. So I think we're going to see it as consumers start to creep in, and I think there's going to be a lot going on in the background that maybe we're not so aware of. I think as far as individuals and what steps you should take, I mean, particularly if you're in university or if you're starting to start your career, experimenting with the use of AI in your tools. I mean, make sure that it's allowed within your work. Don't be doing anything unethical like plagiarism. But I think it's going to be really important that people know how to use these tools and know where to use these tools to make themselves more productive, to make themselves more creative, because the future is going to be one in which everyone is expected to use these tools in their day-to-day work. As far as businesses go, we interact with a lot of businesses. I think particularly in that small, medium enterprise area, I think the focus shouldn't be as much. I think there's a lot of focus on the models, and sometimes thinking, oh, should we build our own models, things like this. I think there's going to be a lot available off the shelf that's going to be really helpful. And so often my advice to businesses that are just starting out is really think about your data how well is it engineered? How well is it governed? What are your processes in place to collect? I think that's really important to, that overall digital infrastructure is super important to ensuring AI is going to be like used effectively. And often, AI can be just the last piece. So you need to know that your fundamentals are really strong before you move forward. I'll pass that one off to one of the other members of the panel as well.
I'll chime in real fast. There is a lot of fear right now. I think it's our reflex reaction. Like there's some new things out there. It's going to take my job, that kind of thing. And you can see on the wall behind me, we have 3 awesome children that are adults now and wrestling with this too. So, but I can tell you from personal experience, so if you see it as something that's going to take your job, there's a good chance it will. I'll just be blunt. But if you literally see it as your productivity supercharger, you will be in a much better place than others. And not to be too, shrewd about it, but embrace, as you said, Robson, embrace how this can help make your current work better, in that you get it done faster, it's higher quality, and obviously that saves your organization money because you're doing a lot more for the same cost to them. So, not to bring it all down to specific business, fundamentals, but that's the way I see it, as my opinion, and I'm living through it now with my team, and how this is absolutely being transformative in productivity and doing things better. And I think the more fluent you get, the more you spend time with it to see how it can help you do the things that took you longer. Whether you're writing something, whether you're analyzing, whether you're researching, a lot of that analytical work is absolutely easily handled by this technology. And yes, you have to abide by your own policies, and I agree with the ethics comment as well. But there's a lot of room for how this can turbocharge what you do. So don't spend your energy saying, I'm worried it's going to take my job. Spend your energy looking at how this thing can make your job, make you so much better at your job. Because if you're a business, if you're an organization, it doesn't matter if it's, for profit or not, you're going to be more attractive to someone if you are that much more productive and better at the work that you do than someone who's not. So that's my advice. Sorry, it's a little bit of a fatherly advice thing because that's in the phase I'm in, but that's how I recommend you look at this.
I think this next one would be good for Sadid. What are the most significant barriers to widespread adoption of AI technologies, and how can we overcome them? Obviously, a lot of the world runs on Microsoft products. So where are you seeing as some of the big barriers to adoption here?
Yeah, this is a very important question, right? So I think, I touched it a little bit before. So model is not equal to product, right? So obviously there are lots of challenges to make a model useful. As part of responsible AI guardrails, making sure that the users are not misusing these models. So to making sure, to understand their intent properly and make sure there is nothing harmful there, as well as at the end when the model is outputting something, then making sure that it's not inappropriate and actually answering and solving the user's problems. So definitely those are the technology challenges to make sure that this is useful. And underlying challenges, of course, is how to scale things up, right? So infrastructure transition, infrastructure improvements, lots of models coming up, how to make sure that they can be useful at scale. So it's basically research in terms of model improvement, data engineering, user feedback gathering, responsible AI best practices. all included on top of how to solve the engineering problem at scale. So that is kind of one of the significant challenge in terms of scaling it up across various industries and millions and billions of users, so that's the widespread adoption that people can actually use it. Because the latency is a huge factor here, because many of these models are very good, but how long users can actually wait to get their answers, right? So it has to be pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from Bo Ra'am. What future developments of AI research are you most excited about, and how do you think they will shape the next generation of AI applications? I think that's a great one for Jungkook.
Yes. So I would like to give a two-part answer. First part answer is I am excited about integration of the AI technologies to the robotics. But the reason is can be controversial. So reason why I'm excited about integration of two technologies, not just a single improvement of the single technology, is that will force AI to be actually better. The current use of the AI technologies are the one that doesn't matter. Yeah, like assistant, like a chatbot, never affecting any crucial task in the real world. But when you use AI algorithm to robot, and if robot hit person, it's a big problem. And if you ever seen how robotics arms work in the car assembly lines, you know how powerful those actuators are. So the reason why I'm excited about the integration of the AI technologies into robotics is not because using current AI technologies, robotics can work. No, it will be extremely dangerous. But it will force the AI technologies to be a lot better, so it can be actually usable in the real world. So that's the part that I'm most excited about. And second part of my answer is that I think that this AI trend, AI boom, will eventually make people appreciate more about human ingenuity, human creativity. Because what we see for example, what we see in the DeepSeek, when 200 people with within the 2-year-old company with $5 million budget beat the $2 or more billion-dollar budget with the thousands of the employee with the almost unlimited training budget. When we see this kind of thing, people will eventually start to realize how important is to make people feel free, at least within the office, and how to make people to be more creative. And I've never seen the evidence of the sad people become more creative. So I think that the second thing that the change that it's not a technology, it can be technology, the people will give much more attention to is how to appreciate people better, so that they can be much better. So it can be more like a technology or the knowledge towards actual humans. So it's a reflection of the human. Yeah.
Excellent. Great answer. I love that. Our next question, with the rapid advancement of AI, what new jobs do you anticipate emerging, and how should the workforce prepare for these changes? I'll take this question just because I get asked something along these lines quite often. I think the short answer is we don't know. People can tell you what new job roles they think will come out, but at the end of the day, no one actually knows. So, how should the workforce prepare? Well, I mean, I think the most important thing is to start using these tools. They're available in Copilot and ChatGPT, and it's becoming more and more accessible to the average person. So I think being able to being someone in the workforce who's able to actually effectively interact with these tools is going to be so important going forward. We talk a lot about interpersonal skills, and in probably the majority of jobs, it's super important that you're able to work well with people, communicate well with people, all of these skills. Well, I think going forward, being able to work with AI well is also going to be key. So that means knowing what AI is good for, where it can help, where it can take over certain tasks, but also know where it's going to have limitations and where you're going to have to be the one driving the thinking forward. So there will absolutely be new roles. And I think we're going to see a lot of roles pop up and disappear really quickly. We're seeing this idea of like a prompt engineer. Is that going to be like a job in 10 years? I'm not so sure. But there's going to be, for myself at least, I usually don't put a lot of stock in these arguments about AI wiping out jobs. I mean, every single technology has displaced jobs. If we just think about tractors and how many jobs that displaced, but we're all pretty happy, or at least I am, to not be doing hard labor in agriculture, which was the job of over 90% of people just 500 years ago. So there will be displacement, there will be new jobs created in this economy. So I think focusing on, I think interpersonal skills between humans will become even more important, because that's something that's very hard to displace with AI. My sister is a primary school teacher. I tell her that she probably has the safest job there is going forward, because that ability to interact with young children, make them feel safe, make them feel connected to that learning environment. Jungkook talked about how do you make people in the workplace feel valued, feel happy, feel like they're ready to do their best work. And then on the other side, that human AI interaction, those are going to be very important. So from businesses, I think getting people in a place where they can experiment, where they can try to use tools, where they can, that innovation can bubble up from the bottom. I think that's going to be super important going forward.
I guess an interesting point about the prompt engineer, Robson, if I could add something to that. You really sparked an interesting thought in my mind, at least. We'll see what the audience thinks. But I think that, early days, it's a new job called prompt engineer, right? If I go back to what I said earlier, yes, prompt engineer sounds cool, sounds technical because of the word engineer, but I argue that it's really not. Yes, there are absolute technical applications, and my colleagues work in that space a lot. But my point is to you, or at least the audience, or the person who asked the question, is you need to become a prompt engineer, and it's not hard. And, I'm not, I get it. There are all kinds of marketing things out there and courses, et cetera. But what I'm saying is, the more you work with it, the deeper you go, and not to do necessarily technical. I have some technical background, but you're certainly not in that role. I think in the future, to the question, you will have one basic requirement will be, are you a prompt engineer? I don't think those are the words that will be used, but what I think it means is you have to be proficient, I think, in how you leverage this to do your role, to do your job. And I think it's interesting now, as you say, Robson, that the first iteration was a title called prompt engineer, but I think it's probably going to morph into something else, not necessarily purely technical, but basically Gen AI or prompt expertise, just like way back, are you certified in Microsoft, whatever, networks or something else? I don't think it'll be necessarily a certification, but it'll be you have to demonstrate, or part of someone vetting you is how well you use this technology to do what you do. So maybe that prompt engineer designation fades, but it turns into how proficient are you at really leveraging this?
Excellent. Totally agree with that. I think that might be a great place to maybe wrap up. Seems like we're at the end of the audience questions here. So, I think we've covered like a lot of ground on this session, which is super interesting. I think there's getting the different perspectives from everyone has also been really great. I think one of the things that strikes me is there's still so much we don't know. The field is moving so fast. How this is going to be adopted, what's the role of data? What's the role of safety and risk in this moving forward? What's going to be the effect on the workforce, on people's jobs? So, one thing I really love about my role is just there's always something new. There's always something unexpected coming around the corner. So thanks so much, Jeff, Junku, Sadid. I think it's been a great discussion.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.